Greetings, adventurers. This is DM Kurt, and I'm here to ask the question, does Manual of the Planes matter? Did it matter? Well, I feel yes. I'll tell you what. So, in the first edition Player's Handbook, there was a single page in the back. Oh, 5th edition one did it too. But first edition Player's Handbook had a little page in the back that described a diagram, 2 diagrams, of the different planes of existence, and no explanation of what those were, what they did, what they were like. Well, Manual of the Planes was the first attempt at explaining the other planes of existence and giving the DM something to do with him in the terms of creating adventures. Like pretty much all of the first edition stuff, it had its flaws and could have been improved upon. So let me just go through my notes. So it provided a bare bones explanation of the travel, survival, and the denizens of those planes. It allowed a DM just enough to write his own adventures if he or she was willing to put in a significant amount of work. You're going to have to come up with your own plot line, and you're just given a few rules of how the environment works. So, one of the most glaring problems is they only added a couple of new monsters, but they described how to make elemental creatures of your own. And what did they fail to do? They failed to have stats for the brand new monster that they had artwork of. That was the glaring problem we all saw at the time. Well, that aside, it provided you with rules for creating alternate universes that paralleled our prime material plane, the prime material being your home plane of existence. Alternate universes, parallel. Cool. Those are all science fiction ideas that had been well established at the time. But from your native plane of existence, you could go in you can go 2 different directions. One direction being the ethereal plane, which is intangibility and just kind of being out of phase with the rest of the world. And it was kind of like when Frodo put on the ring from Lord of the Rings, and these other creatures could see him, but only certain types of magical creatures could. And he was in this kind of a shadowy, sort of a not quite the regular world. And this ethereal plane led off into elemental planes, places where there would be thousands of miles in any direction of nothing but fire, or nothing but earth, air, or water. Just one element, solid, that's all there is. And then there's maybe little islands of other elements in them, and you have the native creatures that roam these areas. Not the most hospitable of terrains. And then what I thought was a little superfluous was where the 4 elemental planes met, there was a little bleed over, and there's this quasi-elemental mix where fire met earth. There was a quasi-elemental plane of magma, which would run for 100 miles in a direction with nothing but magma. Then you had your positive and negative elemental planes of just the energy. Positive energy, negative energy, life draining. Pretty impossible to live in, survive in. So they were not really great places for an adventure. But you could if you were really powerful magically. And then the DM could write some high-level campaign stuff for that. But of a more important note was if you went the other direction and you went from the prime material plane, you went into the astral plane, the great silver void. That was a transitory plane where you get from one place to another using it. But this difference of your intelligence becomes your movement rate. You travel by thought. So creatures that are predators in that area are going to be creatures of great intellect, cunning, and probably quite a bit strange. So this astral plane was usually more of a transit point to the outer planes. Now the outer planes, this had the Outer Planes had a real significance towards your regular D&D sessions, some regular concepts, because these 17 outer planes of existence were the various heavens and hells and such that were tied to each of the 9 different alignments. And it was law versus chaos, good versus evil, each of them having their own location where they were actual creatures, demons or devils or modrons or angels or whatnot, that were almost created from those essences of philosophical thought of such. And it was also a place where mortals of the various alignments, when they died, their souls would go. So this meant that alignment matters. What you do has a consequences. What you become is what you will be. So alignment mattered in the old editions in that we didn't have session zeros, for example. You didn't sit down with your players and make a really granulated list of what behaviors are okay at the table and what aren't. It was a real fly by the seat of your pants kind of thing. And a DM could quickly say, okay, we're going to make up first level characters and start rolling your stats. And by the way, no evil characters. Well, no evil characters, because alignment mattered, meant that there was a chunk of behaviors that would simply not be tolerated at the playing table. If you were good and you did bad things, you'd edge into neutral. And if you're neutral and continue to do bad things, you'd go into evil. And if you became an evil character, you would just be retired as a PC and go be a non-player character, and maybe the DM will run it, probably just shuffle it off to the shelf. And you need to start up a new character because your character acted in ways that were inappropriate. Now, it was brought up that Manual of the Planes never made it to 2nd edition. I would argue it kind of did. It was printed for 1st, 3rd, and that unnamed edition that came before 5th, and it hasn't gone into 5th or 2nd. However, 2nd edition had the Planescape boxed set, which was all about the Outer Planes and this place called Sigil, which was a meeting place in the middle of neutrality where you could just, the city of doors, it'll take you anywhere. There were books of new monsters. There were modules you could run. There was a box set called Blood War, where the demons and the devils, the Tenari and the Beta Zoo, because they want to use different names than demons and devils, the demons versus devils had an eternal war, and you had to realize that their alignments mattered. One of these, they were both evil, but one was chaos and one was law. They had very different opposing alignments, which meant, once again, alignment matters. And the concept that alignment matters is something that it might be the reason why they're probably not going to put this into the new 5th edition, the 5.5e, I like to call it, post Tasha's. You can't have moral relativism if you're going to say that your morals matter. Your good versus evil, law versus chaos actually matter. So maybe we won't see this in 5th edition, and maybe the Outer Planes are going to be kind of glossed over a bit. But extraplanar adventures are a great place to send high-level characters, because really powerful monsters, if they were common in a normal world, you wouldn't have any normal citizens. You wouldn't have any normal civilizations, because the earth-shattering monster of the week would just wreck an entire town. There'd be no more towns. So you have to have a place that has monsters powerful enough to challenge the characters. And perhaps when your characters are powerful enough to have powerful magics, then they can also deal with really unusual environmental effects. So that's why I think Manual of the Planes really mattered. It was the beta edition of Planescape. And perhaps partially this is nostalgia, but that's kind of why I love this book. Thank you, and please like and subscribe to DM Kurt. I'm out.